I want to bring in NBC's Allie Raffa in Washington. Adam Jentleson is a Democratic strategist who worked for Senator John Fetterman and former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid. Peter Baker is the New York Times chief White House correspondent and an MSNBC political analyst. So, Allie, what does the campaign believe Obama does for Harris that maybe she can't do herself?
Yeah, Chris, well, we've seen in poll after poll this problem that the Harris campaign has been having connecting with male voters, but specifically black men, as some of them express an openness to voting for former President Trump or just sitting out in November in general. And so we're seeing both campaigns make efforts to court this block of voters. And the Harris campaign is specifically using the country's first black president to deliver this message. And so as you saw him there at that rally in Pittsburgh last night, he also visited a campaign field office, and he really did not beat around the bush. He said that he wanted to, quote, speak some truths about lower enthusiasm from men compared to when he ran for president. And he suggested that some men feel that way simply because they're not comfortable with the idea of a female president. And he called them out for thinking former President Trump's behavior is a, quote, sign of strength. He called on them to reconsider sitting out on the sidelines in November. And he used this as an opportunity to slam his predecessor on everything from his economic record, as you heard in that soundbite, saying that the Trump-era economy was the result of his work during the Obama administration, also slamming his misinformation spread during these recent hurricanes, as well as his legal woes. And so right now the Harris campaign sees former President Obama as the best messenger to deliver this very blunt assessment. And we're told from sources familiar that this is going to be a major focus of Obama's in these next few weeks until Election Day as he continues this Get Out the Vote tour. We know he's going to go out west to Tucson, Arizona on Friday, and then to Las Vegas on Saturday, according to campaign officials, though. But the campaign, the big question, though, now, Chris, is will this message from former President Obama make an impact? And even if it does, will it make enough of an impact to really move the needle, considering how tight this race continues to be, Chris?
Thank you so much, Allie Raffa. You know, Peter, blunt assessment, as Allie put it. Some might say it was a brutal takedown of a speech of Trump. Obama actually was seeming to relish it. He repeatedly said Donald Trump essentially only cares about himself.
Constant attempts to sell you stuff. Who does that? Selling you gold sneakers and a $100,000 watch and most recently a Trump Bible. He wants you to buy the Word of God, Donald Trump edition. He got his name right there next to Matthew and Luke. I mean, you could not make this stuff up.
You and I both covered him, Peter. Barack Obama knows how to hold a crowd, but he actually acknowledged at one point that he was speaking to a room full of supporters, right? So what does a speech like this accomplish?
Well, I mean, I think, look, obviously it's galvanizing the base. We have seen that these polls are sharply tied. They're within the margin of error. They're not moving drastically one way or the other. It's really going to come down to, it seems, who gets their people out more, right? It's not a persuasion election at this point. There's a handful of people who yet may be persuaded, but broadly speaking, if you're going to win this election, you're going to have to get your people out. Who better to get out Democrats than the last Democratic former president in Barack Obama? But I'm struck by, Chris, I think the same thing you're struck by, which is that, you know, he normally holds this in, right? He doesn't play politics very much anymore. He doesn't give a lot of speeches. If he does politics, it's usually quieter fundraisers and so forth. But every 2 years when we have an election, he comes out on the trail in October and begins sort of telling us what he's really been thinking all this time. And what he really thinks, of course, is not very much of Donald Trump. And you feel like there's a sense of bitterness that Trump is the one who succeeded him in 2016, that's what he ended up leaving the country, that country that elected him would somehow elect Donald Trump. I think he once called an insult to even think about. I think that he is expressing his consternation and his exasperation that Trump seems to get away with things that other politicians couldn't get away with. So he in a way, takes this opportunity, I think, in the fall to finally unleash and unload what he's been thinking the rest of the year without saying.
That's actually a good word. I think he was unloading some things he'd been keeping in for a while, Peter. I guess, Adam, when I was watching it, and obviously the crowd was responding to everything he said, I thought back to, I think it was the last big rally he did for Hillary Clinton in Cleveland, Ohio. And I walked the line, and people were not there to see Hillary Clinton. People were there to see Barack Obama. They wanted to bring their kids to see the first black president. And I say that because then on election night, when I was in a Cleveland precinct, it was pretty dead all day long, pretty dead. And I wonder how much you think in Pennsylvania, Barack Obama's popularity and what he said, including that she is the best prepared person to be president in history, is transferable.
Well, I think there's a big difference from 2016 because Democrats are showing a lot of signs of having very strong enthusiasm on their side. So I think while there is a tremendous amount of enthusiasm for former President Obama, there is also enthusiasm for Vice President Harris. She is also drawing very large crowds across the state of Pennsylvania and everywhere she goes, frankly. So is Governor Walz. He drew big crowds up in Erie County, Pennsylvania, which is not a big population center. And I think you're seeing signs of that in the early voting numbers. Democrats' returns of ballots are running far ahead of Republicans and on pace with what you would expect in a situation where Democratic enthusiasm is outpacing Republicans. So I think I don't see any signs of worry there. What really struck me about the president's message was this is bread and butter, an economic message, something that he is so talented at delivering, something that was sort of an underrated part of his own races in 2008 and 2012, how much of a sort of populist economic message he really relied on to win. And that has downstream effects. What happens in a rally like that is it gets covered in the local news media, local TV, radio, and print in that swing area. And so lots of people, undecided voters in Pennsylvania, are going to see clips of that extremely effective economic message. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is going to Madison Square Garden. He's going to music festivals. He's going to places that aren't going to generate that kind of local media in the swing states. So I think this is a very skilled use of surrogates to drive a core economic message on what voters say is their number one issue.
So let's talk about those swing voters and the economic message, because obviously it is key. And what is getting a lot of play is what we showed at the top of the show, which is him saying, he inherited my economy. Great line. But he also said a couple of things that I thought were interesting. In a change election, he kind of turned that on his head. He said, can you imagine Donald Trump changing a tire? Can you imagine, in a different part of the speech, Donald Trump changing a diaper? And he chuckled a little bit both times. And I wonder, look, Barack Obama is not somebody who throws away words. He puts things together in very thoughtful, specific ways. So what's the message you think he has on the economy that might work? Is it something that simple?
I think that's right. I think that, the contrast that the president was drawing of, Kamala Harris is somebody who cares about people like you versus Donald Trump, who is someone who is only in it for himself, is a very powerful contrast. Polls and focus groups continue to show that that is an extremely strong contrast because it resonates with what people think about former President Trump. They think that he is really only in it for themselves. And even in polls where the race is very tight, even in polls where Harris is still behind Trump on the economy in general as an issue, she consistently wins on cares about people like me. And that is a critically important measure when you look at the underlying numbers of who undecided voters are going to break to on Election Day. So I think drawing that contrast, as President Obama does so effectively, is a really effective tactic.
Peter, there's a new Wall Street Journal poll that shows Donald Trump leading Kamala Harris by 10 points on the question of who's best able to handle the economy, 11 on inflation. And meanwhile, Trump's economic pitches recently seem to center around eliminating taxes on car loan interest, on tips, on Social Security benefits. But I wonder, is it your sense at this stage in this campaign that specific policy proposals are what are going to move the needle on the economy? Or is it what we've been talking about all along, Peter? It's how people feel when they go pick up their groceries.
Yeah, I don't know that specific economic policy proposals are going to move the needle on a large number of people, obviously. They're meant to be signals. They're meant to be showing your values. They're meant to be showing what matters to you and to remind voters of what they may or may not already think about you as a economic leader in this case, right? And it's obviously been Trump's strongest element, basically, the economy and immigration in terms of his issue base, no question about it. So he's trying to reinforce that and make sure that she can't catch up. She has, in fact, narrowed the gap, it looks like, over the last 2 months as she's been a candidate on the economy, which is important for her. But I think you're right. I think a lot of people look at, they've made up their minds. Most voters, 90, maybe 95% of the voters, they've made up their mind. They're not really looking for somebody to tell them something new. They are maybe perhaps looking for motivation to go to the poll. And maybe there are a handful of people out there who are still open to persuasion, but even then, they're probably not regular voters or probably not reliable voters, and only some of them will actually necessarily show up. So we're really, I think, stuck in this very, very tight race for the next 3 weeks, and it's hard to see anything changing it dramatically other than some sort of exigent circumstance, some sort of October surprise.
Yeah, the October surprise that I think both sides are nervous about. All right, Adam, so let me ask you, with the Kamala sign in the background, what keeps you up at night right now, 3 weeks out?
What keeps me up at night is that I go into this election thinking I will not be surprised by any outcome. I won't be surprised by a dramatic victory by Harris. I won't be surprised by a come-from-behind victory by Trump. I think we have we have more measurement tools than ever, but we're really not sure what they're telling us right now. So I think we're in an era of uncertainty, and that's probably going to be the state of affairs all the way to Election Day. So that sense of not truly knowing where the race stands, other than that it is very, very close and could break dramatically either way, is going to be something we all just have to live with for the next few weeks. And it's not going to be fun, but that's the reality of elections in the year 2024.